I was standing in front of the full-length mirror at Bella's bridal boutique, admiring how perfectly my wedding dress hugged my curves when my phone buzzed with Mom's ringtone. 3 weeks before my December wedding to David, and she was calling during my final fitting. The seamstress was pinning the last adjustments when Mom's voice cut through my happiness like a blade. "Asia, honey, we need to talk about your wedding date. Brooklyn just got engaged to Trevor, and she wants a winter ceremony. You need to postpone yours so you don't overshadow her special moment." My hands trembled as she delivered the crushing blow. "If you truly loved your sister, you would cancel this wedding." The boutique fell silent, except for the sound of my ragged breathing. I stepped off the fitting platform, still wearing my dress, and walked to the corner for privacy. Before I could even process Mom's words, my phone rang again. Brooklyn's name flashed on the screen. "Asia, thank God Mom already talked to you." Brooklyn's voice was thick with tears. "I need you to understand something. Trevor gave me an ultimatum. He said, if we don't have our wedding this December, he's calling off the engagement entirely." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white against the ivory silk of my dress sleeve. "Brooklyn, what are you talking about?" "You just got engaged. I've been planning this wedding for 8 months." I know, but you don't understand how serious this is." Her sobs intensified. "Trevor's family has this tradition where they only do winter weddings. His parents are threatening to disown him if he breaks it. He already told his grandmother we'd be married before Christmas." Something cold settled in my stomach. "When did you get engaged?" "Last weekend." "But Asia, I've been thinking about this moment my whole life. You know how I've always dreamed of a winter wonderland wedding with snow and twinkling lights." The seamstress pretended to organize her supplies, but I could feel her listening to every word. I moved closer to the window, watching shoppers hurry past with their holiday packages. "Brooklyn, you knew my wedding date. We sent save the date 6 months ago." "I didn't plan this. It just happened. Trevor proposed, and when I told him about winter weddings, he said it was perfect because that's what his family expects." Her voice shifted, becoming sharper. "Besides, you could have any season. You're not traditional like me. You don't even want a big church ceremony." My reflection stared back at me from the storefront window, a bride who suddenly felt like she was wearing someone else's dream. "What do you mean I'm not traditional?" "Come on, Asia. You're the career woman, the independent one. You make more money than David. You don't need the fairy tale wedding like I do." Brooklyn's tone carried a familiar edge I'd heard throughout our childhood. "Mom and Dad agree that you'd be more understanding about changing dates. You're stronger than me. You can handle disappointment better." The words hit like physical blows. 28 years old, and my little sister still knew exactly how to make me feel like my dreams mattered less than hers. "Brooklyn, this isn't just about a date. We've booked vendors, sent invitations, planned our honeymoon, and I'm sure they'll all understand. Family comes first, right?" "You always say that." She paused, and I heard her voice change, becoming more calculating. "Trevor's parents are already planning to fly in from Seattle. His whole family is expecting this winter wedding. If we don't do it now, they'll never accept me." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of expectation settling on my shoulders like a familiar burden. Growing up, I'd always been the one who understood, the one who compromised, the one who put Brooklyn's needs first because she was more sensitive. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Just postpone until spring, maybe April or May. Think how beautiful a garden wedding would be. You love flowers more than I do anyway." Brooklyn's voice brightened as if the problem was already solved. "And honestly, Asia, I think this might be a sign. You and David have been together for 3 years. What's a few more months? But Trevor and I have this magical connection. When you know, you know." The seamstress cleared her throat softly, reminding me she was still waiting. I caught her eye in the mirror and saw sympathy there. "Brooklyn, I need time to think about this." "There's no time. We need to book the church and the reception hall. The good venues are almost gone for December." Her voice rose with panic. Asia, please, I'm begging you. I've never asked you for anything this big. Just this once, can you put your sister first? The irony wasn't lost on me. Brooklyn had been put first my entire life, but she'd framed it as if I'd never made a single sacrifice for her happiness. I have to go. I'm at my dress fitting. Oh, Brooklyn's voice softened with what sounded like genuine remorse. I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. But Asia, please don't make any final decisions yet. Talk to David. Talk to Mom and Dad. They'll help you see that this is the right thing to do. After hanging up, I stood motionless in my wedding dress, feeling like a fraud. The seamstress approached cautiously. Everything all right, honey? I met her eyes in the mirror. My sister wants me to cancel my wedding so she can have hers instead. She raised her eyebrows but didn't seem entirely surprised. And your parents? They think I should do it, for family harmony. The seamstress nodded slowly, pinching the fabric at my waist. In my 30 years of doing this job, I've seen a lot of family drama, but I've never seen happiness come from someone giving up their dreams for someone else's convenience. Her words settled into my chest like a seed of rebellion. That evening, I drove to my childhood home to collect some boxes I'd been storing in the basement. Mom and Dad were at their weekly bridge club, and Brooklyn was apparently out celebrating her engagement with Trevor. The empty house felt like a museum of my forgotten childhood. In the basement, surrounded by dusty storage boxes, I found myself pulling out old photo albums I hadn't looked at in years. What I discovered made my stomach turn. The first album was labeled Brooklyn's Memories in Mom's careful handwriting. Page after page showed Brooklyn's birthday parties, elaborate princess themes, pony rides, dozens of friends, professional photography. I found pictures of her elementary school graduation with the whole extended family, present her middle school science fair project with Dad beaming proudly beside her display, her high school prom with Mom helping her into a limousine. Then I found my album tucked behind Brooklyn's. It was half the size. My birthday parties were small family dinners with grocery store cakes. My elementary graduation had one photo me alone in my cap and gown, no family visible. My science fair project wasn't documented at all. My prom photos showed me getting ready by myself while Mom was notably absent, probably helping Brooklyn with some other event. I kept digging, finding box after box of Brooklyn's achievements carefully preserved. Every participation trophy, every certificate, every school project saved in protective sleeves. My honor roll certificates were crumpled in a shoebox beneath Brooklyn's kindergarten artwork. The most devastating discovery came in a large plastic container labeled Important Documents. Inside was a professionally bound scrapbook titled Brooklyn's Achievements. Every page was meticulously organized: academic awards, sports ribbons, school photos, newspaper clippings from her high school theater performances. The book was easily 100 pages thick. There was nothing for me. I found my high school valedictorian certificate, the highest academic honor in my graduating class, buried beneath Brooklyn's elementary school participation ribbons. My college acceptance letter to Northwestern University, where I'd earned a full academic scholarship, was folded carelessly in the bottom of the box. Brooklyn's acceptance letter to community college was framed and had obviously been displayed somewhere prominent. Sitting on the cold basement floor in my work clothes, I realized I was looking at physical evidence of 24 years of systematic favoritism. Every achievement I'd worked for had been minimized or ignored, while Brooklyn's smallest accomplishments had been celebrated and preserved. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of everything. The contrast was so stark it looked deliberately cruel. My college graduation photo summa, cum laude, standing alone because my family had been at Brooklyn's dance recital that same day. Brooklyn's community college graduation photo showed the entire family surrounding her, beaming with pride. The pattern was undeniable. I'd been expected to understand, to be mature, to put Brooklyn's needs first from the time I could walk. When Brooklyn wanted my toys, I was told to share because I was the big sister. When she wanted to join activities I was already in, I was encouraged to step back so she could have her turn. When we both needed help with homework, Brooklyn's needs came first because she struggled more than Asia. I'd internalized it all. I'd become the responsible one, the independent one, the one who didn't need as much attention or support. I'd made myself smaller and smaller to make room for Brooklyn to shine. But sitting in that basement, surrounded by evidence of a lifetime of being overlooked, I felt something shift inside me. The good daughter, the understanding sister, the family peacekeeper, she was tired of being invisible. I carefully repacked everything, but I kept my phone full of photos. For the first time in my life, I had proof that my feelings weren't imaginary or oversensitive. The favoritism was real, documented, and undeniable. Driving home to the apartment I shared with David, I felt something I'd never allowed myself before: righteous anger. My wedding wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was my moment to be the center of attention, to be celebrated, to matter most. And my family wanted to take that away so Brooklyn could have another golden moment in the spotlight. Not this time. When I got home, David was pacing our living room with his phone in his hand. His usually calm demeanor had been replaced with agitated energy that I'd rarely seen before. "Asia, we need to talk. Something's been happening that I should have told you about sooner." I set my purse down slowly, my mind still reeling from the basement discoveries. "What's going on?" David ran his hands through his dark hair, a nervous habit from his law school days. "Your dad approached me at the gym last week. I thought it was just casual conversation at first, but then he started talking about our wedding." My heart rate quickened. "What did he say?" "He suggested we might want to consider postponing until spring. He said winter weddings can be stressful, and wouldn't it be nice to have more time to plan something really special?" David's jaw tightened. Then he offered to contribute an extra $5,000 to our budget if we'd consider waiting a few more months. I sank onto our couch, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath me. "He offered you money to convince me to postpone?" "It gets worse." David sat beside me, taking my hands. "Your mom has been calling my mother 3 times this week. She's been telling her that we're being hasty, that young couples should take more time, that maybe we haven't thought this through completely." I stared at him in disbelief. "Your mom didn't tell me?" "I asked her not to. I wanted to handle it myself. But Asia, they've been working on this for weeks. This isn't just about Brooklyn's sudden engagement." David pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages. "Look at these." The messages were from Brooklyn, sent to David over the past 10 days. I read them with growing horror. "Hey David, so excited about Trevor's proposal. Maybe we can plan joint bachelorette parties since we'll be wedding planning at the same time." David: "I hope you can help me convince Asia to be flexible about dates. You know how stubborn she can get when she thinks she's right. It would mean so much to the family if you could support me on this. Asia listens to you more than anyone. I promise if you help me with this, we can work together to plan something even more amazing for spring. Think about it. Garden, wedding, perfect weather, no winter travel stress." I scrolled through message after message, each one more manipulative than the last. Brooklyn hadn't just gotten engaged and panicked. She'd been orchestrating this campaign to steal my wedding date for over a week. "Oh, there's more," David said quietly. "Brooklyn and Trevor haven't even set an actual date. When I asked Trevor about the December wedding at our poker game Tuesday night, he looked confused. He said Brooklyn mentioned they might get married next winter, but nothing was definite." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. She's lying about Trevor's ultimatum. It seems that way. Trevor was actually surprised when I mentioned December. He said he thought they'd take their time planning, maybe look at venues next spring. I stood up abruptly, pacing to our balcony window. The city lights blurred as tears of rage filled my eyes. So Brooklyn made up the story about his family traditions and his grandmother and the ultimatum. All of it. "I think so. And Asia, there's something else." David joined me at the window. Trevor seemed genuinely confused about why there was any conflict between you and Brooklyn. He said he didn't even know you were getting married in December until I mentioned it. The full scope of Brooklyn's manipulation hit me like a physical blow. She'd created an entire fictional crisis, recruited our parents as accomplices, and launched a coordinated attack on my wedding plans, all while her fiancé had no idea any of it was happening. "How long has my family been working on you?" I asked. "Your dad first mentioned postponing about 2 weeks ago. Your mom started calling my mom around the same time. Brooklyn began texting me right after she got engaged." David took my hands again. "Asia, I'm so sorry. I should have told you immediately, but I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just didn't engage, they'd back off." "What did you tell them?" "I told your dad we weren't interested in postponing and that any wedding decisions needed to be discussed with you. I told your mom the same thing. I haven't responded to most of Brooklyn's messages." David's voice hardened. "But the fact that they went around you, that they tried to recruit me to pressure you, that's not okay." I felt a surge of gratitude for David's loyalty, but also a deep sadness that my own family had put him in this position. They'd been willing to manipulate and pressure the man I was going to marry, rather than simply accept that my wedding plans mattered. "What do we do now?" I asked. David was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city below us. "I think you need to decide how much you're willing to sacrifice to keep peace with people who clearly don't respect you." His words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. For the first time in my life, I was being given permission to put myself first. The question was whether I had the courage to take it. 2 days later, Mom called to invite me to Sunday dinner at the house. "Just family," she said. "We need to talk through this wedding situation like adults." I agreed, hoping for a rational conversation where I could present my perspective without drama. David offered to come for moral support, but I decided to face my family alone. I wanted them to hear me, really hear me without any distractions. When I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked along the street. Aunt Linda's blue sedan, Uncle Robert's pickup truck, Grandma Rose's distinctive yellow Buick. My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. I walked through the front door to find 15 family members arranged in the living room like a tribunal. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents sat in a semicircle facing one empty chair clearly meant for me. Brooklyn sat beside our parents on the main couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Asia, honey, come sit down," Mom said, gesturing to the lone chair. "We're all here because we love you and want to help you work through this difficult situation." I remained standing in the doorway, my keys still clutched in my hand. This isn't a family dinner. This is an intervention. "Don't be dramatic," Dad said. "We just thought it would be good to have some perspective from people who care about both you and Brooklyn." Grandma Rose spoke up first, her voice trembling with emotion. "Asia, dear, I've been watching this family for 78 years. Brooklyn has always been more sensitive than you. She needs our support right now." One by one, they stood to address me like witnesses in a courtroom. Aunt Linda explained how family loyalty should come before personal desires. Uncle Robert shared the story of how he postponed his own wedding 40 years ago to accommodate his brother's military deployment, painting it as a noble thing to do. Cousin Jennifer, who I'd barely spoken to in 5 years, felt qualified to weigh in on my character. "Asia, you've always been the strong one. You can handle disappointment better than Brooklyn. This is just a few months' delay." Aunt Martha, Mom's younger sister, delivered what felt like a prepared speech. In my day, young women understood that marriage was about joining families, not just individual desires. "You're being stubborn and prideful, Asia. It's not becoming." Uncle Thomas, Dad's older brother, crossed his arms and fixed me with a stern look. "Your sister is going through a vulnerable time. New engagement, new relationship pressures. You've been with David for 3 years. What's your rush?" Each statement felt like a carefully orchestrated attack designed to make me feel selfish and unreasonable. I looked around the room and realized that every single person had been recruited to Brooklyn's cause. They'd been given talking points, assigned roles, and instructed to pressure me into compliance. The intervention reached its crescendo when Mom stood up and pulled out a folded piece of paper from her purse. Asia, we've all signed this letter asking you to consider postponing your wedding. Everyone here agrees that it's the right thing to do for family harmony. She handed me a piece of floral stationery covered in signatures. 15 family members had officially petitioned against my wedding date. At the top in Mom's handwriting was a paragraph explaining how postponing would demonstrate maturity, compassion, and family loyalty. I looked at Brooklyn, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Triumph, guilt, fear. Does anyone want to hear my side of this? I asked. Of course, honey, Grandma Rose said. That's why we're all here. I've been planning this wedding for 8 months. We've put down deposits, booked vendors, sent invitations. Our honeymoon is scheduled and paid for. Our friends have made travel arrangements. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Brooklyn got engaged 1 week ago and immediately decided she wanted my wedding date. It's not that simple. Brooklyn spoke up, her voice small and wounded. You're making it sound like I'm trying to hurt you. I'm not. I'm just in a really difficult situation with Trevor's family. Uncle Robert leaned forward. Asia, when I postponed my wedding, it was the best decision I ever made. Sometimes life requires sacrifice. When you postponed your wedding, was it because your sibling decided they wanted your date after you'd already planned everything? Uncle Robert shifted uncomfortably. Well, no, but the principle is the same. Is it because it seems to me like the principle here is that Brooklyn's wants matter more than my needs? Mom's voice sharpened. That's not fair, Asia. This isn't about favoritism. This is about compassion. I looked around the room at these people who claimed to love me, who had traveled here to tell me my dreams, mattered less than my sister's impulses. The intervention they'd planned was supposed to overwhelm me into submission through sheer numbers and emotional manipulation. For a moment, I considered giving in. It would be so much easier to apologize, agree to postpone, and restore peace to the family. The pressure was enormous, the expectation clear. But then I thought about David's loyalty, about the photos in the basement, about 28 years of being expected to understand and compromise and put Brooklyn first. I need some air, I said, and walked out of the room. In the backyard of my childhood home, standing beneath the oak tree where Brooklyn and I used to play, I made a decision that would change everything. They wanted to treat this like a war, then I'd fight like one. I walked back into the living room where my family sat waiting, their faces expectant. The intervention had clearly been choreographed to end with my tearful surrender, but I wasn't following their script. I've made my decision, I announced, still standing rather than taking the designated chair of shame. Dad leaned forward with obvious relief. We knew you'd see reason, sweetheart. You've always been our practical daughter. I'm keeping my wedding date. The room erupted in disappointed murmurs and sharp intakes of breath. Brooklyn's face crumpled as if I'd physically struck her. Asia, please reconsider, Mom pleaded. We've all taken time out of our busy schedules to help you understand. Actually, Dad, I interrupted. Since you mentioned being practical, I'm curious about something. Have you already started making calls about my wedding vendors? Dad's face flushed slightly. I don't know what you mean. Simple question. Have you contacted any of my wedding suppliers? The silence in the room was deafening. Brooklyn shot a worried glance at our parents. Dad cleared his throat. I may have made some preliminary inquiries to help you understand your options. What kind of inquiries? I called Riverside Manor to ask about their cancellation policy and spring availability. I thought it would be helpful to have that information when you made your decision. Dad's voice grew defensive. I was being proactive. My hands trembled with rage. What else? I contacted Thompson Photography to see if they could reschedule your package, and I may have spoken to Elegant Catering about alternative dates. Uncle Robert nodded approvingly. That's smart planning, helping her see the practical side. You contacted my vendors without my permission, I said slowly, assuming I would agree to cancel my wedding. I was trying to save you the embarrassment of having to make those calls yourself, Dad protested. If you decided to postpone, I wanted to have solutions ready. Mom jumped in. We were being helpful, Asia. We know how stressful these situations can be. And what about Brooklyn's vendors? What has she actually booked for this winter wedding that's so urgent? The room fell silent again. Brooklyn's crying intensified. Brooklyn has been researching venues, Mom said carefully. Researching or booking? Well, researching, but the good venues fill up quickly for December. So she hasn't actually booked anything. She's been to 3 venues this week, Dad added quickly. Pinehurst Country Club, the Grand Ballroom downtown, and Willowbrook Gardens. I laughed bitterly. She's been venue shopping for a week while you've been calling my vendors to cancel my bookings. Do you see the problem here? Grandma Rose spoke up uncertainly. Asia, dear, maybe there's a compromise we haven't considered. The compromise is that I keep my wedding date that I planned and booked 8 months ago, and Brooklyn plans her own wedding for a different time, like normal people do. Brooklyn's sobs grew louder. You don't understand the pressure I'm under with Trevor's family. They have expectations. Then meet their expectations with your own planning instead of stealing mine. Aunt Linda stood up abruptly. Asia, this attitude is exactly what we were worried about. You're being selfish and stubborn. I'm being selfish by keeping my own wedding date. You're being selfish by refusing to help your sister in her time of need, Uncle Thomas declared. Her time of need. She got engaged a week ago. This is not a crisis. This is poor planning. Mom tried a different approach, her voice becoming soft and pleading. Asia, honey, we're not asking you to give up your wedding. We're asking you to show some flexibility for family harmony. You're asking me to cancel 8 months of planning so Brooklyn can have what she wants when she wants it. Just like always. The accusation hung in the air. Several family members shifted uncomfortably. That's not true, Brooklyn whispered. You're making this about our whole childhood. Isn't it? When have you ever been asked to sacrifice something for me? When have you ever been told to understand and compromise and put my needs first? Girls, this isn't the time for old grievances, Dad warned. Well, when is the time? When is it appropriate for me to matter as much as Brooklyn? The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Nobody had an answer because they all knew I was right. Finally, Mom spoke. Asia, we've all made mistakes as parents and family members, but this wedding situation is happening right now. We can deal with other issues later. No, we deal with it now, because this wedding situation is exactly like every other situation in our family. Brooklyn wants something and everyone expects Asia to step aside. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery where I'd saved pictures from the basement discovery. Oh, how many of you knew that my high school valedictorian certificate is buried under Brooklyn's participation trophies? How many of you knew that my college graduation photos show me standing alone because you were all at Brooklyn's dance recital that day? The shame on their faces told me everything I needed to know. I'm done being the understanding daughter. I'm keeping my wedding date, and if Brooklyn wants a winter wedding, she can plan one for next year. Dad's face hardened. Asia, if you insist on being this unreasonable, there will be consequences. Family comes with obligations. What kind of consequences? If you're not willing to be part of this family's decisions, maybe you shouldn't expect this family's support. The threat was clear: comply or face ostracism. It was the same manipulation they'd used on me my entire life, just more explicit. I looked around the room at these people who claimed to love me, but were willing to cut me off for refusing to sacrifice my happiness for Brooklyn's convenience. Then I guess we'll see how much your support was really worth. The stunned silence that followed my defiance stretched for several heartbeats. I could see the shock on their faces. They'd never seen me openly refuse their demands before. Throughout my entire life, I'd been the accommodating daughter, the one who bent to keep peace. But as I looked at Brooklyn's tear-streaked face and my parents' disappointed expressions, something unexpected happened. Instead of the guilt and shame they were expecting to see, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. "You know what?" I said quietly, my voice breaking just enough to sound believable. "You're all right." The room shifted confusion, replacing disappointment. "I am being selfish," I continued, letting tears pool in my eyes. "I've been so focused on my own plans that I haven't thought about what's best for the family." Brooklyn looked up sharply, hope flickering across her features. "Brooklyn, I'm so sorry. You're right that you need support right now. A new engagement is overwhelming, especially with Trevor's family putting pressure on you." I walked over and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. "I should be helping you, not fighting with you." "Asia." Brooklyn's voice was uncertain, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I'll postpone my wedding. Family is more important than any date on a calendar." I looked around the room at my relatives, who were beginning to smile with relief. I don't know why I was being so stubborn. You all came here today to help me see clearly, and I was too proud to listen. Mom burst into tears. "Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. You have such a good heart." Dad nodded approvingly. "This is the Asia we raised, always putting family first." Grandma Rose clapped her hands together. "I knew our girl would do the right thing." I hugged Brooklyn, feeling her body relax against mine as she sobbed with relief. "Thank you, Asia. Thank you so much. I promise I'll make this up to you." "Don't worry about that. We're sisters. We support each other." I pulled back and managed a watery smile. Actually, this might be a blessing in disguise. Spring weddings are supposed to be more popular anyway. "You could have such a beautiful garden ceremony." Aunt Linda suggested, her earlier criticism forgotten now that I was complying. "And think of how much more time you'll have to plan," Uncle Robert added. "You could really do something special." I nodded enthusiastically, playing the role of the enlightened daughter who'd finally seen reason. "You're absolutely right. I was rushing into things. David and I should take more time to make sure we're doing everything perfectly." The relief in the room was palpable. Family members began chatting about spring venues and garden themes, offering suggestions and support now that the crisis was over. Brooklyn was glowing, basking in the attention and sympathy that came with being the rescued sister. Brooklyn, I want to help you plan your wedding," I offered. "I know I have experience with vendor research and planning. I'd love to share what I've learned." "Really?" Brooklyn's eyes lit up. "That would be amazing. You're so much better at organizing than I am." "Of course. We can start looking at venues together. I can share my vendor contacts, help you navigate the planning process." I squeezed her hand. "I want your day to be absolutely perfect." As the family began to disperse, making plans for dinner and discussing Brooklyn's wedding timeline, I felt a strange sense of calm. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd successfully manipulated me into submission once again. But they had no idea that their victory was exactly what I needed. Over the next hour, I played my part perfectly. I apologized to Dad for questioning his helpful vendor calls. I thanked Mom for organizing the family discussion. I promised to call David that evening to explain my change of heart. "He'll understand," Mom assured me. "David seems like such a reasonable young man." "He is. I'm sure once I explain how important this is for Brooklyn, he'll be completely supportive." Brooklyn hugged me repeatedly, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. "I love you so much, Asia. I was so scared you'd hate me." "I could never hate you. You're my baby sister." I smoothed her hair back from her face. "We're going to plan you the most beautiful winter wedding anyone has ever seen." As I drove home, I felt the first stirrings of a plan forming in my mind. Brooklyn thought she'd won my compliance. My parents thought they'd successfully orchestrated another sacrifice from their responsible daughter. My extended family thought they'd guided me toward maturity and selflessness. They had no idea they'd just given me exactly what I needed to turn this entire situation to my advantage. When I walked into my apartment, David took one look at my face and immediately pulled me into his arms. How bad was it? Worse than I imagined, but also better than I hoped. He pulled back to study my expression. What does that mean? It means they showed me exactly who they are, and now I know exactly what I need to do. I spent the next 3 hours telling David everything that had happened at the intervention. His anger on my behalf was fierce and protective, but he listened without interrupting as I explained my realization. They've been manipulating me my entire life by making me feel guilty for wanting what I want. But today, they overplayed their hand. They revealed just how far they're willing to go to control me. Oh, so what's the plan? I smiled for the first time since the whole ordeal began. The plan is to let them think they've won, while I gather everything I need to expose exactly what kind of people they really are. David was quiet for a moment. Are you sure about this? Once you start down this road, there's no going back to the way things were. The way things were was me being invisible. I'm done being invisible. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling more awake and alive than I had in years. For the first time in my life, I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. The next morning, I called Brooklyn bright and early, my voice bubbling with sisterly enthusiasm. I've been thinking about your wedding all night. I'm so excited to help you plan. Should we meet for coffee to start brainstorming? Brooklyn's delight was infectious. Yes, I've been making lists of everything I want. Oh, Asia, thank you so much for being understanding. I was so worried you'd be angry with me. Never. I'm just sorry I was being so unreasonable yesterday. Sometimes I get too focused on details and lose sight of what's really important. I poured myself coffee while maintaining my cheerful tone. What time works for you? I cleared my whole day to focus on your wedding. We met at Sunrise Cafe, Brooklyn's favorite brunch spot, where she arrived with a notebook full of wedding ideas and her laptop bag. She'd clearly been awake half the night planning. I've been looking at venues online, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. The Riverside Manor that Dad called about is gorgeous, but I also love Willowbrook Gardens. It has this amazing conservatory for winter ceremonies. Those both sound beautiful. Have you talked to Trevor about his preferences? Brooklyn's face dimmed slightly. He's been really busy with work this week. I haven't wanted to bother him with too many details. Of course, men can be overwhelmed by wedding planning, but I'm sure he has some opinions about the basics, venue style, guest count, that sort of thing. I think he trusts me to handle most of it. He's not really a details person. I filed that information away and steered the conversation toward specifics. What about your timeline? When are you thinking for the ceremony? Ideally, mid-December, maybe December 15th or 22nd. Something close enough to Christmas to feel magical, but not so close that people can't attend. Smart thinking. And has Trevor's family given you any guidance about their traditions or expectations? Brooklyn hesitated, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Well, they haven't been super specific yet. Trevor's going to talk to them this week about details. I thought you said they had strong feelings about winter weddings and were expecting a December ceremony. They do. Trevor explained it to me, but I don't remember all the family history details. Brooklyn's voice became slightly defensive. The important thing is that it needs to be this winter. I nodded supportively while mentally noting every inconsistency. Of course. Well, I think we should introduce Trevor and David properly so they can be friends during this whole wedding planning process. Maybe we could set up a double date or guys' night. Brooklyn brightened. That would be great. Trevor's been wanting to get to know David better. Perfect. David has poker night with his college friends this Thursday. I'll ask him to invite Trevor. It'll be good for them to bond over guy stuff while we handle the real planning. We spent the next 2 hours going through Brooklyn's Pinterest boards and venue wish lists. She was genuinely excited about the wedding planning, but I noticed she kept making vague references to Trevor's opinions without any specific details. When I asked direct questions about his preferences, she deflected or gave generic answers. Brooklyn, I have to ask, and please don't take this the wrong way, but are you absolutely sure Trevor is on board with rushing into a December wedding? It's a big step from engagement to marriage in just a few weeks. Brooklyn's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. Of course he is. Why would you ask that? No reason. I just want to make sure you're both completely comfortable with the timeline. Planning a wedding in 6 weeks is incredibly stressful. Trevor's the one who suggested December. He's very traditional about family expectations. Right, because of his family's winter wedding tradition. That's so sweet that they have customs like that. It is. His grandmother would be heartbroken if we broke tradition. I made mental notes of every claim Brooklyn made about Trevor's family and their supposed traditions. By the end of our coffee meeting, I had a clear list of statements I could fact-check. I have an idea, I said as we gathered our things to leave. Why don't I take you venue shopping this weekend? I can use my experience to help you ask the right questions and negotiate better packages. Would you really do that? Of course, I want your day to be perfect. Plus, I learned so much during my own planning process. I'd love to share the knowledge with you. Brooklyn hugged me tightly. You're the best sister ever. I'm so lucky to have you. We're lucky to have each other. Thursday evening, David texted me updates from poker night. Trevor seems confused about the December wedding timeline, going to probe carefully. An hour later, this is interesting. Trevor thinks they're planning for next winter, not this December. My phone buzzed with David's call around 10 o'clock. Asia, you need to hear this. Trevor has no idea about any family wedding traditions. When I mentioned the December deadline, he looked completely confused. What did he say exactly? He said Brooklyn mentioned wanting a winter wedding eventually, but he thought they were talking about December next year. He has no idea his family is supposedly pressuring them into an immediate ceremony. My heart rate quickened. Did you ask about his grandmother's expectations? I mentioned family traditions casually, and Trevor laughed. He said his family is pretty laid back about weddings. His grandmother's been married 4 times, so she's not exactly traditional about ceremony timing. The lies were unraveling exactly as I'd suspected. What about the ultimatum Brooklyn claims he gave her? Asia, Trevor told me he suggested they take their time planning and maybe look at venues in the spring. He's concerned about Brooklyn's stress level and thinks she's rushing because she's excited. So there's no ultimatum, no family pressure, no winter wedding tradition. None of it. Trevor seems genuinely confused about where Brooklyn got these ideas. He's actually worried that she's feeling pressured by someone else to rush into marriage. After hanging up with David, I sat in our living room processing the full scope of Brooklyn's deception. She'd invented an elaborate story about family pressure and ultimatums to justify stealing my wedding date. She'd manipulated our parents into believing her fiancé was forcing her hand, when the opposite was true. But more than that, she'd convinced our entire extended family to pressure me based on complete lies. 15 people had signed a petition asking me to sacrifice my wedding for Brooklyn's fabricated emergency. I pulled out my phone and began documenting everything. Screenshots of Brooklyn's text messages to David, notes from our coffee conversation with timestamps, David's account of his discussion with Trevor, a growing file of evidence showing that my sister was a calculating liar who'd orchestrated an elaborate manipulation campaign. The good daughter in me felt guilty for investigating my own sister, but the woman who'd spent 28 years being pushed aside for Brooklyn's convenience felt something else entirely. It felt like justice. Friday evening, I decided to take a more direct approach. I called Brooklyn with a carefully planned conversation designed to get her talking freely about her real motivations. Hey sis, I've been thinking about everything you said yesterday, and I have to admit something. I'm actually feeling relieved about postponing my wedding. Really? Brooklyn's voice perked up with interest. Yes. I think I was rushing into things because I felt like I had something to prove. You know, being the first one married, showing everyone I could pull off the perfect wedding. I injected just enough vulnerability into my tone to make it believable. But watching you and Trevor together, seeing how natural and right your relationship is, it made me realize David and I should take more time. Brooklyn's response was immediate and telling. Oh, Asia, I'm so glad you're seeing it that way. You and David are great together, but you've always been so competitive about milestones. Competitive? What do you mean? You know, always trying to be first at everything. First to graduate, first to get a serious job, first to buy a house. Sometimes I think you rush into things just to beat me to them. The irony was staggering. Brooklyn was accusing me of being competitive while literally stealing my wedding date out of jealousy. I never thought about it that way. Do you really think I'm competitive with you? It's not your fault. It's just your personality. You've always needed to be the successful one, the accomplished one. Sometimes it's intimidating for those of us who are more normal. I bit my tongue to keep from responding to that backhanded insult. Instead, I pushed deeper. Brooklyn, can I ask you something honestly? Are you absolutely sure about marrying Trevor this quickly? I mean, you've only been together for 8 months. There was a long pause. When Brooklyn spoke again, her voice had changed completely. Since we're being honest with each other, I'll admit something. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ready for marriage at all. What do you mean? Trevor's great, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I feel like I got engaged because it was expected. You know, like I'm 25, I've been with him for a while. People keep asking when we're getting serious. Brooklyn's voice became more animated as she warmed to her confession. And then, when I heard about your wedding plans, I just felt this panic like I was falling behind again. Falling behind? Asia, you have to understand what it's like being your sister. You graduated valedictorian while I barely passed high school. You got a full scholarship to Northwestern while I went to community college. You have this amazing career and make more money than most people our age. You bought a house with David while I'm still renting a studio apartment. The resentment in her voice was palpable, years of carefully hidden jealousy finally bubbling to the surface. I never meant to make you feel inadequate. I know you didn't. But that doesn't change how it feels to always be the sister who's behind in everything. When you announced your engagement, I felt like I was losing again. Like you were going to be the first married sister on top of everything else. So when Trevor proposed, I saw it as my chance to finally be first at something important. To have something special that was mine before you got yours. Brooklyn's voice broke slightly. I know that sounds terrible, but I've spent my whole life watching you achieve things I could never achieve. Just once I wanted to be the sister everyone was excited about. I felt a complex mix of emotions, anger at her manipulation, sadness at her obvious pain and frustration that she'd turned our relationship into a competition I never knew we were having. Brooklyn, I had no idea you felt this way. How could you? You've been too busy succeeding to notice that I've been struggling. Do you know how hard it is to live in the shadow of someone who makes everything look effortless? My life isn't effortless. I work incredibly hard for everything I have. I know you do, and that makes it worse somehow. You work hard and succeed. I work hard and barely keep up. Brooklyn's tears were audible now. When Trevor proposed, I thought maybe I could finally have something that was bigger and better than anything you'd done. A winter wedding more elaborate than your plans, something that would make me the center of attention for once. But Trevor wants to wait until next winter. The silence that followed was deafening. Brooklyn, how do you know what Trevor wants? I'd pushed too far, revealed that I'd been investigating. I needed to recover quickly. I just assumed since you said his family traditions were so important, a year of planning would make sense for something that significant. His family traditions are very important, Brooklyn said, but her voice had lost its earlier openness. She was back to reciting her scripted story. Of course, I'm sorry for questioning that. I'm just trying to understand the timeline pressure. The pressure is real, Asia. Trevor made it very clear that we need to get married this December, or his family won't accept me. She was lying again, retreating back into the fabricated story now that she'd revealed too much truth. But I had gotten what I needed, a recorded confession that her real motivation was jealousy and competition, not family pressure or ultimatums. I understand, and I'm committed to helping you make this December wedding happen. That's what sisters do for each other. Thank you, Asia. I love you so much. I love you too, Brooklyn. After hanging up, I saved the recording and added it to my growing file of evidence. Brooklyn had confessed to lying about Trevor's ultimatum, admitted to manipulating the situation out of jealousy, and revealed that her real goal was to upstage my wedding, rather than honor any family traditions. But the most damning revelation was her admission that she wasn't even sure she wanted to get married. She'd orchestrated this entire crisis, destroyed my wedding plans, and manipulated our family into pressuring me all for a wedding she didn't actually want to, a man she wasn't sure she wanted to marry. It was pathological. And I was done being the victim of her pathology. Saturday morning, I woke up with crystal clear purpose. I'd spent 28 years being the understanding sister, the accommodating daughter, the family peacekeeper, but understanding and accommodation had gotten me nothing except manipulation and disrespect. It was time to become someone else entirely. I started by calling my maid of honor Jessica under the pretense of updating her about the wedding postponement. Jessica, I need to tell you something difficult. I've decided to postpone my December wedding to support Brooklyn through her engagement stress. What? Jessica's voice was sharp with disbelief. Asia, what are you talking about? You've been planning this wedding for 8 months. I know, but Brooklyn is going through a really hard time with Trevor's family pressure, and I realize that family should come first. Family should come first, Asia. What family pressure? Brooklyn just got engaged last weekend. I let Jessica's outrage wash over me while I took careful notes of her response. She was expressing exactly what any reasonable person would think about the situation. My parents helped me see that I was being selfish and inflexible. They organized a family meeting to help me understand Brooklyn's perspective. They organized what, Asia? That sounds like an intervention. It was just family members sharing their thoughts about how I could be more supportive. How many family members? 15? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. 15 people came to tell you to cancel your wedding for your sister's convenience. They came to help me see that I was prioritizing the wrong things. Asia, I need to tell you something. Your mother has been calling me. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? She's been calling me 3 times this week, asking me to talk to you about being more flexible with Brooklyn. She told me you were being stubborn and competitive and that maybe I could help you see reason. What did you tell her? I told her that your wedding plans were none of my business to interfere with, and that if there were family issues, you were capable of handling them yourself. Jessica's voice grew heated. But Asia, the fact that she was trying to recruit your friends to pressure you is completely inappropriate. I feigned surprise. I had no idea she was calling you. She also called Sarah and Emma. We've been talking about it because we were all concerned. Your mother was basically asking us to gang up on you to convince you to postpone your wedding. The manipulation was even more extensive than I'd realized. My parents hadn't just recruited family members, they'd been working on my friends as well. What exactly did she say to you? She said you were being unreasonable about wedding dates, that you needed to learn to compromise for family harmony, and that Brooklyn was more fragile and needed support during this difficult time. Jessica paused. She also said some things about your personality that were really concerning. Oh, what kinds of things? She said you've always been competitive with Brooklyn, that you rush into things to prove points, and that you have trouble seeing other people's perspectives when you're focused on your own goals. I felt a surge of rage so intense it made my hands shake. My own mother had been systematically destroying my reputation with my closest friends, painting me as selfish and competitive while positioning Brooklyn as a victim of my supposed character flaws. Jessica, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you think I'm competitive and selfish? Are you kidding me? Asia, you're one of the most thoughtful people I know. You've never been competitive with Brooklyn. If anything, you've spent your whole life making excuses for her behavior and covering for her when she's irresponsible. What do you mean covering for her? Remember when she was supposed to plan your mom's 50th birthday party and forgot until the last minute you jumped in and organized everything? Then let Brooklyn take credit so your mom wouldn't be disappointed. Jessica's voice grew more animated as she remembered. Or when she was supposed to house sit for your parents last summer and went to Vegas instead, you canceled your weekend plans to cover for her. I'd forgotten about those incidents along with dozens of others over the years. I'd been covering for Brooklyn's irresponsibility for so long that it had become invisible to me. I never thought of those as covering for her. That's exactly my point. You don't think of yourself as competitive or selfish because you're not. You think of everyone else first, sometimes to your own detriment. Jessica's tone softened. Asia, are you sure postponing your wedding is what you really want to do? I think it's what I need to do for family peace. Family peace at what cost? You've been dreaming of this wedding for months. You've put deposits down, made plans, gotten emotionally invested in this timeline. Why should you sacrifice all of that? Because Brooklyn decided she wants the same season. Because she's my sister and she needs support right now. She's your sister and she's 25 years old. She's capable of planning her own wedding without stealing yours. After hanging up with Jessica, I made similar calls to Sarah and Emma, discovering that both had received multiple calls from my mother, trying to recruit them as allies in the campaign to make me postpone my wedding. All three of my closest friends had been told that I was being selfish, competitive, and inflexible. My parents had launched a coordinated character assassination campaign, spreading their version of events to anyone who might have influence over my decision. They'd painted me as the villain and Brooklyn as the victim, all while claiming they just wanted family harmony. But they'd overplayed their hand. The people who actually knew me well could see through the manipulation immediately. My friends were outraged on my behalf, not convinced by my parents' narrative. I spent the rest of the weekend documenting every conversation, every phone call, every manipulation tactic my family had used. By Sunday evening, I had a comprehensive file showing the systematic campaign to pressure me into compliance. Phone records showing my parents' repeated calls to David, my friends, and my vendors. Text messages from Brooklyn trying to recruit David as an ally. Recorded conversations proving Brooklyn's lies about Trevor's ultimatum. Evidence of financial favoritism spanning decades. Testimony from friends about my mother's character assassination attempts. It was enough to prove that this wasn't about family harmony or supporting a stressed sister. This was about maintaining a family dynamic where Brooklyn's wants always came first, no matter the cost to everyone else. Monday morning, I made a decision that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. Monday afternoon, I took a personal day from work and drove to the bank, where I'd established my financial independence from my family years ago. What I discovered in the loan documents and account histories made my stomach turn with a mixture of rage and vindication. I'd requested copies of my financial records going back 5 years ostensibly for mortgage refinancing purposes. But what I was really looking for was proof of the financial disparities I'd suspected my entire life. The evidence was devastating in its clarity. My student loan documents showed I'd borrowed $43,000 for college, while Brooklyn had received full family funding for her community college education. My car loan paperwork revealed I'd financed my Honda Civic at 22% interest because I had no credit history, while Brooklyn's bank records, which I could access as an authorized user on our family's shared financial software, showed her Jeep had been purchased outright by our parents 2 years ago. But the most damning discovery came from cross-referencing property tax records and credit reports. My parents had been listed as co-signers on Brooklyn's apartment lease, meaning they were financially responsible for her rent. They'd been paying her $800 monthly rent for 3 years, while I'd been struggling to afford my mortgage payments alone. I found evidence of credit cards in Brooklyn's name with our parents listed as account holders. Cards they'd been paying off monthly, while Brooklyn accumulated charges for restaurants, shopping, and entertainment. The credit limits were substantial, $15,000 across 3 cards money Brooklyn had been spending freely while I'd been carefully budgeting every purchase. The financial manipulation went deeper than I'd imagined. While I'd been told repeatedly that I needed to be independent and learn responsibility, Brooklyn had been receiving comprehensive financial support that totaled nearly $2,000 monthly in direct assistance plus unlimited credit access. But the most shocking discovery was a savings account I found listed under both my parents' names with a clear designation, Brooklyn Wedding Fund. The account had been established 4 years ago and currently held $18,000. $18,000 they'd been saving for Brooklyn's eventual wedding while telling me I needed to fund my own celebration entirely. I took screenshots of everything, carefully documenting the financial evidence of systematic favoritism. Then I made copies of documents showing my own financial struggles, the student loans, the high-interest car, financing the mortgage I'd qualified for without family assistance. The contrast was undeniable. While I'd been fighting for every dollar of independence, Brooklyn had been living a subsidized lifestyle that allowed her to appear successful without any actual responsibility. From the bank, I drove to David's office downtown. His law firm occupied 3 floors of a glass tower, and his colleagues had always been supportive of our relationship. Today, I needed their professional expertise for personal reasons. I need legal advice about documenting harassment and financial discrimination, I told David when I arrived at his office. He closed his laptop immediately. What's happening? I've discovered the extent of my family's financial manipulation, and I want to understand my legal protections if this situation escalates. David's colleague, Jennifer, a family law specialist, joined our conversation when David explained the situation. Her assessment was sobering and empowering. What you're describing sounds like financial abuse within a family system, Jennifer explained. While it's not technically illegal for parents to favor one adult child financially, the pattern you're documenting suggests deliberate emotional manipulation. What are my options if they escalate their pressure tactics? Document everything. Keep records of all communications threats and attempts to interfere with your business relationships or personal life. If they start contacting your employer or attempting to damage your professional reputation, you may have grounds for harassment claims. What about the vendor interference? My father contacted my wedding suppliers without permission. Jennifer nodded grimly. That could constitute intentional interference with business relationships, especially if his calls caused financial damage or contract complications. So I have legal recourse if needed. You have options, but more importantly, you have evidence. Sometimes the threat of legal action is more effective than actual litigation. That evening, David and I spent 3 hours organizing all the evidence I'd gathered into a comprehensive presentation. Financial documents showing decades of inequality, recorded conversations proving Brooklyn's lies, phone records documenting the manipulation campaign, Screenshots of text messages and emails revealing the coordinated pressure tactics. "This is incredibly thorough," David said as we reviewed the final compilation. "But Asia, once you use this evidence, there's no going back to normal family relationships." There is no normal. Normal was me being invisible. Normal was me sacrificing everything for Brooklyn's convenience. Normal was me accepting crumbs while she got the feast. So what's the end game here? I looked at the evidence spread across our dining room table, 28 years of systematic mistreatment, finally documented and organized. The end game is truth. I want everyone who pressured me to see exactly what they were really supporting. I want Brooklyn to face consequences for her manipulation. And I want my parents to understand that their favoritism has destroyed their relationship with one of their daughters. And after that, I build a life with people who actually value me, starting with my wedding on my original date, surrounded by people who support my happiness instead of demanding I sacrifice it. David took my hands across the table. "I love you for fighting back. I love you for refusing to disappear to make room for someone else's ego. Are you ready for the fallout? Because this is going to get ugly. I've been ready since the day your father tried to bribe me to convince you to postpone. Your family showed me exactly who they are, and I choose you over their approval every single time." That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow, I would begin the most difficult confrontation of my life, but for the first time in decades, I felt like I was fighting for something that truly mattered. My own worth. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected gift that would become the centerpiece of my counterattack. I was having coffee at my usual cafe near work when I spotted Brooklyn's ex-boyfriend Marcus at a corner table, but he wasn't alone. Brooklyn was sitting across from him, her hand covering his on the table, leaning in close with an intimacy that had nothing to do with casual friendship. I quickly moved to a booth with a clear view of their table and discreetly opened my phone's camera. What I witnessed over the next 30 minutes would become the nuclear option in my arsenal. Brooklyn and Marcus were clearly involved romantically. Their body language, the way they touched each other's faces, the passionate kiss they shared when they thought no one was looking. This was obviously an ongoing affair, not a chance encounter. I managed to capture several photos and a short video of their interaction, all with clear timestamps. But more importantly, I was close enough to overhear fragments of their conversation. "Trevor doesn't understand me like you do," Brooklyn was saying. "This engagement feels like playing house with someone who doesn't even see the real me." "Then why are you going through with the wedding?" Marcus asked. "Because I can't back down now. Asia already postponed hers. The whole family is invested in my plans. I'm trapped by my own lies." "What lies?" "I told everyone Trevor's family was pressuring us into a December wedding. But that's not true. Trevor actually wants to wait until next year. I made up the urgency to force Asia to move her date." Marcus looked confused. "Why would you do that?" "Because I couldn't stand the idea of her being the first married sister. She gets everything, the better job, the nicer apartment, the perfect relationship. Just once I wanted something that was mine first." "So you sabotaged her wedding?" "I didn't sabotage it. I just moved up my timeline to claim the season I wanted." Brooklyn's voice carried a defensive edge. "She'll have her wedding eventually. This way, we both get what we want." "But you don't actually want to marry Trevor." Brooklyn was quiet for a long moment. "I want to marry Trevor. He's safe, stable, what everyone expects. But when I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I never feel with him." "Brooklyn, this is insane. You can't marry someone just to beat your sister to the altar." "It's not just about beating her. It's about finally being the daughter my parents are proud of. Do you know what it's like to live in Asia's shadow? Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect relationship with a lawyer? I'm the family disappointment who barely graduated community college and can't hold down a steady job." "So you're marrying someone you don't love to prove a point?" I'm marrying someone I could love eventually to finally have something meaningful in my life. Brooklyn's voice cracked with emotion. But I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wondering what would happen if I chose what I actually want instead of what looks good on paper. Marcus reached across the table and took both her hands. Leave him. Cancel the wedding. Stop competing with your sister and start living your own life. I can't. I've gone too far. I've manipulated too many people. If I back out now, everyone will know what I really am. What are you really? Brooklyn's answer made my blood run cold. A jealous, manipulative person who destroyed her sister's happiness because she couldn't handle being second best at anything. The self-awareness in her confession was almost more disturbing than the original manipulation. She knew exactly what she was doing and exactly how wrong it was, but she was choosing to continue anyway. Marcus and Brooklyn left separately, but not before arranging to meet again Thursday night. I had captured the entire affair on camera along with Brooklyn's confession about lying to manipulate the family and her admission that she was marrying Trevor for the wrong reasons. This was the smoking gun that would destroy Brooklyn's victim narrative completely. But I wasn't done gathering evidence. That afternoon, I called Trevor's office and arranged to meet him for coffee, ostensibly to get to know my future brother-in-law better. Trevor was a genuinely nice guy, thoughtful, intelligent, and clearly crazy about Brooklyn, despite his confusion about the wedding timeline. Over coffee, I carefully guided the conversation toward family expectations and wedding planning. Brooklyn mentioned that your family has strong traditions about winter weddings, I said casually. Trevor looked puzzled. Winter weddings? Not particularly. My parents got married in June. My sister had a fall ceremony. Where did Brooklyn get that idea? She said your grandmother would be heartbroken if you broke family tradition. My grandmother? Trevor laughed. Grandma Ruth has been married 4 times in every season you can imagine. She always says the timing doesn't matter as long as the love is real. What about the pressure to get married this December? Pressure? From whom? Trevor's confusion was genuine. Asia. I'm concerned someone's been giving Brooklyn wrong information. My family is incredibly supportive of whatever timeline we choose. If anything, they think we should take our time planning. So there's no urgency from your side. None whatsoever. I suggested we look at venues for next fall or winter, give ourselves plenty of time to plan something special. I was actually surprised when Brooklyn seemed stressed about December timing. I felt sick for Trevor. He was a good man who genuinely cared about Brooklyn, and he had no idea he was being used as a prop in her manipulation campaign. Trevor, can I ask you something personal? How do you feel about getting married in just a few weeks? Honestly, it feels rushed. I love Brooklyn, but marriage is a big step. I'd prefer to take our time, make sure we're both completely ready. His expression grew concerned. Why? Has Brooklyn said something about my feelings? No, nothing like that. I just want to make sure you're both happy with your plans. I want Brooklyn to be happy. If a quick December wedding is what she really wants, I'll make it work. But I wish I understood where the urgency is coming from. After leaving Trevor, I felt the full weight of Brooklyn's betrayal. She wasn't just manipulating me and our family, she was lying to her fiancé about his own family's expectations and rushing him into a marriage he wasn't ready for. That evening, I created a comprehensive dossier of evidence that would expose every lie Brooklyn had told and every manipulation she'd orchestrated. Photos and video of her affair with Marcus, recorded confessions of her lies, Trevor's testimony contradicting her claims about family pressure, financial records proving decades of parental favoritism. It was enough evidence to completely destroy Brooklyn's reputation and expose the systematic manipulation that had governed our family for years. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. First, I wanted to give Brooklyn one final chance to tell the truth voluntarily. And if she refused, I would burn her lies to the ground publicly and permanently. December 15th arrived with the crisp, clear weather I'd always dreamed of for my wedding day. The irony wasn't lost on me that while my family believed they'd successfully manipulated me into canceling, I was about to have the most important day of my life exactly as I'd planned it. At 7 in the morning, I was at Riverside Manor directing vendors and confirming final details. My real wedding party, Jessica, Sarah, Emma, and David's sister Kate, had been secretly helping me maintain all my original plans while I'd played the role of the compliant sister for the past 3 weeks. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Jessica asked as she helped me into my wedding dress in the bridal suite. "Once you go live with that video, there's no taking it back." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I'd spent the past week creating a comprehensive video presentation that would serve as commentary during my live-streamed wedding ceremony. Every lie Brooklyn had told, every manipulation tactic my parents had used, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, all organized into a devastating expose that would play out in real time as I married David. "Your parents think you're having a quiet day at home," Sarah said, applying my final makeup touches. "Brooklyn thinks you're helping her with vendor meetings this afternoon." "They'll figure out the truth soon enough." At 10:30, I received the text I'd been expecting from Brooklyn. "Asia, where are you? We're supposed to meet at Willowbrook Gardens at 11 for the venue tour." I responded with perfect sisterly enthusiasm. "Sorry, running late. Start without me, I'll be there soon." She had no idea I was 2 miles away putting on my wedding dress. The ceremony was scheduled for noon with a live stream that would be shared across all my social media platforms. I'd invited everyone who mattered, my real friends, David's family colleagues who'd supported me, and even some extended family members who'd been kept in the dark about the manipulation campaign. But my immediate family had no idea it was happening. At 11:45, I stood at the back of the ceremony space with David, both of us wearing wireless microphones connected to the live stream setup. My phone showed that nearly 300 people were already watching the feed. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the camera as the music began, "welcome to my wedding. Yes, my wedding. The one my family believes I canceled to accommodate my sister's last-minute demand for my wedding date." The in-person guests, about 60 people who knew the real situation, began applauding as David and I walked down the aisle together. But the real audience was online, where hundreds more people were tuning in as word spread about the dramatic live stream. Before we begin the ceremony, I continued speaking directly to the camera. "I want to share some information about what's really been happening in my family over the past month." I nodded to Jessica, who began displaying the first slide of evidence on a large screen, visible to both the in-person audience and the live stream. Screenshots of Brooklyn's text messages to David, trying to recruit him to pressure me into postponing. 3 weeks ago, my parents demanded that I cancel my wedding so my sister Brooklyn could steal my December date for her own ceremony. When I initially refused, they organized a family intervention with 15 relatives to pressure me into compliance. The next slide showed photos of the financial evidence Brooklyn's fully funded lifestyle compared to my struggle for independence. What they didn't know was that I discovered decades of systematic favoritism and financial manipulation designed to prioritize Brooklyn's wants over my needs. I walked down the aisle while narrating the evidence I'd gathered, turning my wedding into a combination of celebration and explosive expose. The live stream comments were exploding with support and shock as viewers realized they were witnessing a real-time family drama. But the most devastating discovery was that Brooklyn has been lying about everything. The screen displayed photos from the cafe showing Brooklyn's affair with Marcus, while demanding that I sacrifice my wedding for her urgent December timeline. My sister has been cheating on her fiancé with her ex-boyfriend. The family pressure, she claims, is forcing her into a quick wedding. It doesn't exist. Her fiancé actually wants to wait until next year. I could see the live stream viewer count climbing as people shared the feed across social media. This wasn't just my wedding anymore. It was becoming viral content. Brooklyn confessed to me that her real motivation was jealousy. She couldn't stand the idea of me being the first married sister, so she invented a crisis to steal my moment. David took the microphone as we reached the altar. "Hi, everyone. I'm the groom in this situation. I want you to know that Asia's family spent weeks trying to pressure me into convincing her to postpone our wedding. They offered me money, recruited my mother as an ally, and launched a campaign to make Asia seem selfish for keeping her own wedding date." The officiant, who was fully briefed on our plan, stepped forward with a smile. "Well, then let's make sure this wedding happens exactly as Asia and David originally planned it." At that moment, my phone exploded with calls and messages. My parents, Brooklyn, various family members who were just discovering the live stream as word spread through their social networks. But I silenced my phone and focused on marrying the man who'd stood by me through this entire ordeal. Do you, Asia, take David to be your husband in defiance of family manipulation and in celebration of your own worths? I absolutely do. Do you, David, take Asia to be your wife with full knowledge that you're gaining a woman brave enough to expose lies and fight for her own happiness? Without question. As we exchanged rings, the live stream comments filled with support from strangers who were inspired by watching someone refuse to be manipulated into invisibility. You may kiss the bride and show everyone watching that love wins over manipulation. Our kiss was broadcast live to over 1,000 viewers as my family's carefully constructed lies crumbled in real time. The ceremony concluded with one final revelation. For those wondering about Brooklyn's December wedding that was so urgent it required destroying mine, Trevor has no idea his bride-to-be is having an affair, lying about his family's expectations, and marrying him to win a competition with her sister. I looked directly into the camera for my closing statement. This is what happens when you refuse to disappear to make room for someone else's ego. Sometimes the truth is the most beautiful wedding gift you can give yourself. The reception was in full swing when they arrived. I was dancing with David to our first dance song when Jessica tapped me on the shoulder and pointed toward the venue entrance. Brooklyn stood in the doorway wearing a white dress. Apparently, she'd been shopping for wedding gowns during what was supposed to be our venue tour. Behind her, Trevor looked confused and concerned. My parents flanked them, their faces masks of rage and humiliation. The live stream was still running, though I'd switched to a more casual commentary style for the reception. When my family appeared, the comments exploded with anticipation. "Well, everyone," I said to the camera, "my family has just arrived at my reception. The wedding they thought they'd successfully canceled." I handed my bouquet to Jessica and walked toward the entrance, David close behind me. The entire reception fell silent as guests realized they were about to witness the confrontation firsthand. Brooklyn reached me first, her face streaked with tears and makeup. "Asia, what have you done?" she whispered. "I got married, on my original wedding date, just like I planned 8 months ago." "You've ruined everything. Trevor knows about Marcus now. He's calling off our engagement." I looked at Trevor, who was standing slightly apart from the group, his face a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Trevor, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you deserve to know the truth before making a permanent commitment to someone who was lying to you about her feelings and your family's expectations." "Is it true?" Trevor asked Brooklyn. "About Marcus, about my family traditions, about the urgency?" Brooklyn's silence was answer enough. My father stepped forward, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Asia, you've humiliated this entire family. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've told the truth, something that seems to be foreign to this family." "You've aired our private business in front of strangers on the internet," Mom hissed. "This will follow all of us forever." "The way your favoritism and manipulation has followed me my entire life." The confrontation was being broadcast live to over 1,500 viewers. Now, as word of the drama had spread across social media platforms, comments were flooding in with support for my decision and shock at my family's behavior. Brooklyn, I said, turning to my sister, would you like to explain to Trevor and everyone watching why you lied about his family's wedding traditions? I didn't lie, I misunderstood. You misunderstood that his grandmother has been married 4 times and doesn't care about seasonal traditions. You misunderstood that he wanted to wait until next year. You misunderstood that he never gave you an ultimatum. Trevor spoke up, his voice heavy with disappointment. Brooklyn, you told me your family was pressuring you to postpone. You said Asia was being stubborn about sharing holiday dates. None of that was true, was it? I was trying to protect everyone's feelings, Brooklyn said weakly. By destroying your sister's wedding plans and cheating on me. The livestream comments were unanimous in their support for Trevor and condemnation of Brooklyn's behavior. My father tried to regain control of the situation. This is a private family matter that should be handled privately. Turn off that camera. This stopped being private when you organized a 15-person intervention to pressure me into compliance. This stopped being private when you called my vendors to cancel my bookings without permission. This stopped being private when you recruited my friends to campaign against me. We were trying to help you see reason, Mom protested. You were trying to maintain a family dynamic where Brooklyn's wants always matter more than anyone else's needs. David stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, you spent 3 weeks trying to manipulate me into pressuring Asia to postpone our wedding. You offered me money, recruited my family, and launched a coordinated campaign based on lies. Did you really think there would be no consequences? The livestream audience was now witnessing my family's manipulation tactics in real time as they struggled to maintain their narrative in the face of documented evidence. Brooklyn made one last desperate attempt to regain sympathy. Asia, I made mistakes, but you're destroying my entire life over a wedding date. I'm not destroying your life. I'm exposing the lies you used to try to destroy mine. You could have just talked to me privately. I tried talking to you. You lied about Trevor's ultimatum. You lied about family pressure. You lied about your motivations. I gestured toward the camera. But mostly, you lied to everyone here about who I am and what I was doing. You painted me as selfish and competitive, like you were literally stealing my wedding date out of jealousy. Trevor finally spoke directly to Brooklyn. We're done. The engagement is over. I can't marry someone who lies this easily and manipulates this many people. He handed her the engagement ring and walked away, stopping only to shake David's hand and wish us well. Brooklyn collapsed into tears, but for the first time in my life, I felt no obligation to comfort her. My parents rushed to support her, shooting me looks of pure hatred. This is what happens, I said to the livestream audience, when you refuse to enable manipulation. Sometimes people face consequences for their actions. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but sometimes it's the only thing that can set you free. My father delivered one final threat before leaving. Asia, you've made your choice. Don't expect this family's support for anything ever again. I stopped expecting your support years ago. The difference is now I don't need it. As my immediate family left the reception in disgrace, the remaining guests erupted in applause. The live stream comments were overwhelmingly supportive, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of family manipulation and celebrating my decision to fight back. For the first time in my life, I had put my own happiness first, and it felt like victory. The week following my wedding was a whirlwind of consequences that rippled far beyond anything I'd anticipated. The live stream had been shared over 50,000 times across social media platforms, and my story had resonated with people who'd experienced similar family dynamics. But the most immediate impact was on my family's reputation in our community. Monday morning, I received a call from Aunt Linda, the same woman who'd lectured me about family loyalty during the intervention. Asia, I owe you a tremendous apology. I had no idea what your parents had told us wasn't the complete truth. What do you mean? After watching your wedding video, I called Trevor to check on him. He explained what really happened with Brooklyn's lies about his family. Then I started asking other family members what they actually knew versus what your parents had told us. Linda's voice was heavy with regret. We were manipulated into pressuring you based on false information. I tried to tell you my side during the intervention. I know, and I'm ashamed that we didn't listen. Your parents painted such a convincing picture of you being stubborn and competitive, but after seeing the evidence you presented, I realized we were being used to bully you into compliance. Similar calls came throughout the week. Uncle Robert, cousin Jennifer, even Grandma Rose reached out to apologize and express their horror at learning how they'd been manipulated. The family intervention that was supposed to pressure me into submission had backfired spectacularly, turning my extended family against my parents instead. Tuesday brought news about Brooklyn's social consequences. Jessica reported that several of Brooklyn's friends had reached out to express their disgust at her behavior. Apparently, Brooklyn had been telling everyone a completely different story, Jessica explained. She'd been portraying herself as the victim of your jealousy, claiming you were trying to sabotage her engagement out of spite. Her friends believed that until they saw the wedding live stream. Now they're seeing all the evidence of her lies, the affair with Marcus, the manipulation of your family. She's lost most of her social circle. Wednesday, I learned that my parents were facing their own reckoning. Mom's book club had disbanded after several members expressed discomfort with her manipulation tactics. Dad's golf buddies had apparently been questioning him about his behavior after watching clips from the live stream. Your parents are discovering that their social reputation was built on people believing they were reasonable, fair people, David observed. Now that everyone's seen evidence of systematic favoritism and manipulation, their credibility is destroyed. The most satisfying news came Thursday. Trevor had reached out to thank me for exposing Brooklyn's lies before their wedding. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd married her without knowing about Marcus or her real motivations, he told David. She would have been miserable. I would have been confused about why nothing felt right, and we probably would have divorced within a year. Have you talked to her since the reception? She's been calling and texting constantly, trying to explain and apologize. But Asia was right. Once someone shows you they can lie that easily and manipulate that many people, how do you ever trust them again? Friday evening brought the confrontation I'd been expecting. My parents showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking haggard and desperate. Asia, we need to talk, Dad said when I opened the door. About what? About fixing this disaster you've created. I let them into my living room, but didn't offer them seats. You've humiliated us in front of our entire community. Mom said, her voice tight with controlled anger. People are treating us like we're horrible parents. Maybe because you were horrible parents, at least to me. We made mistakes, but what you did was vindictive and cruel, Dad protested. You've destroyed Brooklyn's engagement, ruined our family relationships, and made us social pariahs. I documented and exposed 28 years of systematic favoritism and manipulation. The consequences are yours to own. Mom tried a different approach, her voice becoming pleading. Asia, we know we weren't perfect parents, but families work through problems privately. You've aired our worst moments for the whole world to see. My worst moments have been aired in this family my entire life. Every time you chose Brooklyn's happiness over mine, every time you minimized my achievements to celebrate hers, every time you expected me to sacrifice for her convenience. I pulled out my phone and showed them the engagement photos from my social media. These have been shared 50,000 times. Want to know why? Why? Because 50,000 people recognize the family dynamic you created. Parents who have golden children and scapegoats, siblings who have been manipulated into competing instead of supporting each other, adult children who've been gaslit into believing their needs don't matter. Dad's face flushed with anger. So you decided to punish us publicly. I decided to tell the truth publicly. The punishment is just the natural consequence of your behavior. What do you want from us? Mom asked desperately. An apology. We're sorry we weren't perfect. We're sorry we made mistakes. Now, what? I looked at my parents, two people who'd spent decades making me feel invisible and were now demanding that I fix the consequences of their choices. I want you to understand that sorry isn't enough. I want you to acknowledge that your favoritism was systematic and damaging. I want you to admit that you tried to destroy my wedding to maintain Brooklyn's entitlement. And I want you to accept that your relationship with me may never recover from what you've done. You're our daughter, Dad said. Family forgives and moves forward. Family respects and supports each other. This family taught me that my happiness was less important than Brooklyn's comfort. This family expected me to sacrifice my dreams to accommodate her impulses. This family tried to manipulate my fiancé into pressuring me. I opened the front door. That family doesn't get forgiveness without accountability. So what does that mean for us going forward? Mom asked. It means you need to figure out how to be different people if you want a relationship with me. It means therapy, genuine self-reflection, and acknowledging the damage you've done without expecting me to manage your guilt. And if we do that, then maybe eventually we can have an honest relationship based on mutual respect instead of manipulation and control. After they left, I sat in my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time in my life, I'd refused to manage my family's emotions or fix their problems. It felt like freedom. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of the house David and I had bought together, preparing dinner for the family we'd chosen to celebrate my 29th birthday. Jessica Sarah, Emma David's sister Kate, and several other friends who'd supported us through the wedding drama were coming over for what had become our monthly dinner tradition. The aftermath of my wedding livestream had created ripple effects I never could have anticipated. The video had been viewed over 200,000 times and had inspired dozens of people to share their own stories of family manipulation and favoritism. I'd received thousands of messages from people who recognized their own experiences in my story. You gave me the courage to set boundaries with my narcissistic mother, one woman wrote. Watching you expose your family's lies helped me realize I wasn't crazy about the favoritism in my own family, shared another. Your wedding showed me that I don't have to disappear to make room for other people's egos, a young man had messaged. What started as my personal rebellion had accidentally become a movement of people refusing to enable toxic family dynamics. Brooklyn had entered individual therapy 3 months ago, finally forced to confront the reality of her manipulative behavior. Her therapist had reached out through David to arrange a mediated conversation between us, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Brooklyn had lost not just Trevor but most of her social circle and was apparently struggling to understand how her actions had consequences for other people. She's starting to realize that she can't manipulate her way out of the hole she dug for herself, the therapist had explained. For the first time in her life, she's facing real accountability. My parents had also started therapy, both individual and couples counseling. Mom had called 2 weeks ago to say they were beginning to understand how their favoritism had damaged both their daughter's me through neglect and Brooklyn through enabling her worst impulses. We want to learn how to have a relationship with you that isn't based on control, she'd said, but we understand if you're not ready for that yet. I wasn't, but for the first time I believed they might eventually become people I could have an authentic relationship with. The most unexpected development had been my professional success. The marketing skills I'd used to expose my family's manipulation had caught the attention of a nonprofit organization focused on helping people escape abusive family situations. They'd offered me a position as their communications director, allowing me to turn my painful experience into meaningful work. You understand what it feels like to be gaslit and manipulated by people who claim to love you, the director had explained. That empathy, combined with your strategic thinking, makes you uniquely qualified to help other people tell their stories. My new job involved helping survivors of family abuse document their experiences and navigate the complex process of setting boundaries with manipulative relatives. It was emotionally challenging work, but deeply fulfilling in a way my previous marketing job had never been. David and I had also started a private Facebook group for people dealing with family favoritism and manipulation. It had grown to over 10,000 members who shared advice, support, and validation for experiences that often get dismissed as normal family drama. The thing people don't understand, I'd posted recently, is that family manipulation often looks like love from the outside. It gets disguised as keeping peace, or being understanding, or putting family first. But real love doesn't require you to disappear. As our dinner guests arrived that evening, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. Instead of managing my family's emotions and enabling their dysfunction, I was surrounded by people who celebrated my successes and supported my happiness without expecting me to earn their love through sacrifice. Speech time, Jessica announced as we gathered around the dinner table. It's been 6 months since our girl here showed the world how to fight back against family manipulation. Tell us how you're feeling about everything. I looked around the table at faces filled with genuine affection and support the family I'd chosen, instead of the family I'd inherited. I'm feeling grateful, I said, grateful that I finally found the courage to value myself enough to fight for my own happiness. Grateful for friends who saw through my family's lies and supported me anyway. Grateful for a husband who chose my truth over their approval. And what about the future? Sarah asked. Any regrets about the nuclear option? None. The truth was always going to come out eventually. Brooklyn's lies, my parents' favoritism, the systematic manipulation, you can't build relationships on that foundation forever. I raised my glass. Sometimes love means refusing to enable the people who hurt you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for toxic people is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions. David squeezed my hand under the table. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. As we toasted to chosen family and authentic relationships, I felt a deep sense of peace. The scared, invisible daughter who'd spent 28 years trying to earn love through sacrifice was gone. In her place was a woman who understood her own worth and refused to accept anything less than genuine respect and support. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I watched your wedding video today and realized I need to stop letting my family manipulate me into putting my sister's needs first. Thank you for showing me it's possible to fight back. Starting therapy tomorrow. I smiled and showed the message to David. Still changing lives, Mom, he said proudly. Still learning that my voice matters, I replied. The dinner conversation flowed around topics of career achievements, travel plans, and future dreams. Normal topics for people whose energy wasn't being drained by toxic family dynamics. For the first time in my adult life, my relationships were based on mutual respect rather than my utility to other people. As the evening wound down, Kate raised her glass one final time. To Asia, who taught us all that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about people who choose to love and support you without expecting you to disappear in return. To Asia, everyone echoed. Looking around at my chosen family, I realized this was what love was supposed to feel like: safe, supportive, and celebrating rather than diminishing. I'd spent so many years accepting crumbs of affection while giving everything I had to people who saw my sacrifice as their due. Never again. The truth had set me free, and I was never going back to being invisible. I hope my story inspires you to think about your own family dynamics and relationships. Have you ever been expected to sacrifice your happiness for someone else's convenience? How do you handle situations where family members try to manipulate or guilt you into compliance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more content about setting boundaries and choosing yourself. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that their happiness matters too. Thank you for joining me on this journey from manipulation to liberation. Remember, you deserve relationships that celebrate your success rather than demanding your sacrifice. Your dreams matter. Your happiness matters. You matter. Here's to choosing yourself, setting boundaries, and surrounding yourself with people who love the real you, not the version that makes everyone else comfortable.